I I never thought it would come to this. I never imagined that a single proposal, one word, one moment could turn my life upside down. But here I am, standing on the precipice of everything I've ever known, and I can't look away. Let me start at the beginning, the place where everything changed. It was supposed to be just another ordinary evening. Another dinner, another glass of wine, another boring routine night with my husband, Mark. I don't know when things started to feel wrong. When I look back, I think I always knew something was missing between us. The chemistry, the spark, it had all fizzled out. And yet, I stayed. Why? Because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I thought I had no choice but to stick by him. After all, he was a good man, trustworthy, dependable. But good? Good doesn't always make you feel alive. That night, Mark was unusually quiet. He'd been getting older, more distant. His work had kept him away more often, and when he was home, it felt like we were strangers. We'd barely spoken in weeks. But then, my phone rang. It was my old friend, Claire, and the moment I heard her voice, I felt something stir inside me. She was excited, eager to tell me something. But I could tell it wasn't just any normal update. Her voice wavered with a strange energy, and I could feel the weight of her words before she even said them. "You won't believe this," she said. "You know that old man I told you about? The one who's always at the country club? Well, he's proposing to me. He's 73 years old, but he's offering me everything. His money, his life, his future." I froze. 73? I couldn't understand it at first. Claire, who had always been the heartbreaker, was talking about a man who could have been her grandfather, and yet, he was proposing marriage to her. I didn't know if I was shocked or jealous, but something about the way she spoke made me feel alive. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the wine. Or maybe it was something deeper, something about the way she spoke of him, the way she had been treated like a queen, lavished with attention. But I found myself, almost without thinking, saying something I would later regret. "What if I told you someone else proposed to me too?" I whispered into the phone, my voice barely audible. There was a pause on the other end. "Wait. What? Who?" I didn't know what possessed me to tell her about the man I had met. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just a one-time thing. But when I spoke of him, Victor, a man who had been a stranger just days before, something changed inside of me. He was nothing like Mark. He was passionate, confident, older, with eyes that seemed to see through me. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about the physical attraction, though, that was certainly undeniable. It was the way he made me feel. Seen. And when he proposed to me without hesitation, I said yes. But now, as I sit here telling you this story, I know how dangerously close I came to losing everything. That night, as I hung up the phone, I felt a flutter of excitement but also a creeping sense of guilt. I hadn't told Mark, not yet, but I knew I had to. As if fate were playing some twisted game with me. Mark returned home late that evening. He was distracted, preoccupied, but the air between us was thick. I could feel it, the secret I was holding, the growing tension. And then, without warning, he did something that changed everything. He proposed. But this wasn't just any proposal. It was the proposal. The one I had been waiting for, the one I thought would come years ago, before the distance, before the coldness settled between us. It wasn't grand or dramatic. It wasn't in front of an audience or with a shiny ring. It was a simple question. "Will you still be mine?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. "I know I'm not the man I used to be, but I can't imagine my life without you." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. For a moment, I was frozen. The room seemed to close in on me. The two men, the two choices, suddenly collided in my mind. Victor, who had made me feel seen and wanted. Mark, who had been my companion for so long, but who now felt like a stranger. I was torn. I felt a rush of guilt, of excitement, of fear. The weight of it all crushed me. How could I say yes to one when my heart ached for the other? The truth is, in that moment, I didn't know what I wanted, but I did know one thing. Everything was about to change. The next few days were a blur. Mark was acting differently, more affectionate, more caring, but also more distant. It was as if he knew something was off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. And I was unraveling. I couldn't stop thinking about Victor. I couldn't stop thinking about what he had offered me, the life he promised. He wasn't just about desire, he was about living again. And I couldn't deny it any longer. I wanted more. I needed more. But I also knew the consequences. I knew what would happen if I chose Victor, the destruction of everything I had built with Mark, the devastation that would follow, the lies, the betrayal, the guilt. But what I didn't know was that Mark was hiding something too, something that would flip everything I thought I knew on its head. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced, going back and forth between Mark and Victor, between duty and desire. Between the man I had spent years with and the man who had awakened something I thought was long gone. And then it happened. I found the letter. It was hidden in the drawer, tucked beneath some old receipts and papers. I didn't know why I opened it. I didn't know why I looked. But when I read the words, my heart stopped. It was from Claire. And it wasn't just about Victor. It was about me. She had written to me, confessing everything. She had seen Mark at the country club. She had seen him with another woman, younger, beautiful. And she had seen the way Mark had been lavishing attention on her. It was a bombshell. Mark, the man I thought was so loyal, was hiding his own secrets. And suddenly, everything changed. I couldn't deny it any longer. My world was unraveling piece by piece. The truth, once buried deep, had come to the surface, and it had exposed everything. I sat there staring at the letter, my hands shaking. The ground beneath me felt like it was slipping away. How could I have missed it? How had I been so blind? Was I really so lost in my own desires that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me? The truth was unbearable. Mark, the man I thought I could trust, the man I had chosen to stay with all these years, was betraying me, and now I had betrayed him. In that moment, I knew there was no going back. The next day, I confronted Mark. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the letter. "What have you been doing, Mark?" He looked at me, his face pale, his eyes filled with regret. "I never meant for you to find out. I was going to tell you." But what?" I interrupted, my voice breaking. You were going to tell me? You were going to tell me about her?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. The truth was out. Our marriage was built on lies. And no matter how much we both wanted to pretend, it was broken beyond repair. But now, the question remained. What do I do now? Do I walk away from everything? From Victor? From Mark? From the life I thought I knew? Or do I try to rebuild what's left of my broken heart? The days after that confrontation were filled with silence, a thick, suffocating silence that pressed against me from all sides. I could feel it, the weight of the secret I had uncovered, the knowledge that everything I had built was crumbling. Mark moved through the house like a ghost, his presence a painful reminder of everything that had been lost. But even then, even amidst the wreckage, I couldn't bring myself to leave him. I knew what he had done. I knew about the woman at the country club. And yet, I couldn't tear myself away. The guilt wrapped around my chest, tightening with every passing hour. There was something about him, something I couldn't let go of. Was it love? Was it fear? Or was it simply the comfort of the life we had built together, even if that life was now a lie? As much as I wanted to walk away, as much as I wanted to scream at him for betraying me, part of me still held on to the hope that we could fix things. Maybe, just maybe, we could salvage what little was left of our marriage. But deep down, I knew the truth. everything had changed. Our marriage would never be the same again. I avoided Victor for a while. He hadn't called, hadn't texted, and I told myself I was too confused, too hurt to think about him. But every time I closed my eyes, his face was there, his eyes filled with longing, with desire. The pull was undeniable. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. But could I really throw away everything I had with Mark for a man who had only recently entered my life? Was it fair to even consider it? But then came the moment I wasn't prepared for. It was a Sunday afternoon when Victor called. I had been avoiding his calls, but something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the way he said my name. Or maybe it was the fact that I had already made up my mind to answer it. Either way, I picked up. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice smooth, concerned. There was something in the way he spoke that made me feel safe, as though everything would be okay if I just let go and trusted him. "I don't know," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I don't know what to do anymore." He paused for a moment. "Do you want to talk about it?" And just like that, the floodgates opened. I found myself spilling everything to him. The betrayal, the pain, the heartbreak. I told him everything I had been holding inside, everything that had been eating me alive since that night. He listened quietly, not interrupting, just letting me speak. And with every word I said, I could feel the weight lifting, the pressure easing just a little. "I don't know what to do, Victor," I finished, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm torn between what I feel for you and what I've built with Mark." There was a long silence before he responded. "You don't have to decide right now, but I want you to know something. What we have, it's real. It's not just some fling, some distraction. What we have is everything." His words hit me like a lightning bolt. Was he serious? Could he really mean that? Did he see the same thing I did when we were together? The chemistry, the connection, the intensity? But then, reality struck. Could I really leave Mark? Could I really turn my back on everything I had known, everything I had worked for, just for the promise of something more? Was it worth the pain, the guilt, the loss? I spent the next few days in a haze, my mind racing in circles. Every time I looked at Mark, I saw the man who had betrayed me. But I also saw the man who had been a part of my life for so long. How could I walk away from that? How could I let go of the years we had spent together? But when I closed my eyes, I saw Victor. I saw his face, his touch, the way he made me feel. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't stay, not anymore. The night I made the decision, I couldn't sleep. My heart was pounding in my chest, my mind racing. I needed to talk to Mark. I needed to tell him the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The lies had gone on long enough. I found him sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. He didn't look at me when I walked in, didn't even acknowledge my presence. It felt like we were strangers, and in that moment, we were. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice trembling. Mark didn't respond. He didn't even look at me. The silence between us was suffocating. "I can't do this anymore," I said, the words finally spilling out. "I can't pretend that everything's fine. I know about the other woman, Mark. I know what you've been doing." Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were filled with pain, regret, and something else I couldn't quite place. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never meant for you to find out this way." I shook my head, tears starting to fall. "It doesn't matter. The truth is out now, and I can't stay in a marriage that's built on lies." The room was thick with tension. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, letting the truth hang in the air like a heavy, suffocating fog. "I've been with someone else," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Victor. And I can't go back to the way things were." Mark didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, his face pale, his eyes empty. And in that moment, I realized something. We were both lost. Both of us had strayed, and neither of us knew how to fix it. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice barely a whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know what to say to him. What was there left to say? Our marriage was over. There was no going back. I had made my choice. But as I walked away from Mark, a part of me wondered if I had made the right one. Could I really build something with Victor? Could I leave everything behind and start over? Or was I just running away from the pain, from the truth? In the end, I couldn't say. But one thing was for sure, nothing would ever be the same again.